Welcome back to segment number 2 today of Blue Collar Sports as we move into another topic on this pretty warm day down here in Boise, Idaho. We're at the Pulse Radio Studio at Boise State University. If you heard our first segment, again, we are Blue Collar Sports. If you heard our first segment, we talked about the NBA Lakers, Celtics. They're in trouble, and I'm sure we'll continue to talk more and more about that. But now we're going to dive into a more specific topic within the NBA, something we've done for the past week. We've given you our point guards, our shooting guards. Now we're going to move into our small forwards.
That's right. We're doing a top 10 rankings of our current NBA players at positions, and then after the end, we'll do a top 10 current NBA players all together. But you said it. We did point guards. We did shooting guards. Now we're going to do small forwards, which I think might be the deepest list in position in the NBA right now. 6, 7 guys, I think, absolutely above everybody else, and that's a lot deeper than the shooting guards, I'd say, we did from last week. So I'm excited to get to it. I know our lists are going to be very, very different. This might be our debate of the week. So this is your top 10 current NBA small forwards.
Yeah, you're right about it. It's a lot deeper than other positions. I think point guards are really starting to make a name for themselves in this era of the NBA.
True.
That was a pretty good one. But I think small forwards are still the best. I'm looking at my list right here, and 4, maybe 5 guys in my top 5 guys are probably going to be in my top 10 current NBA players.
I got 5.
I mean, you look at MVP candidates right now. There's 3 of them that are right there. So a lot of big-time names here, and that's what we're going to get into right now. A couple honorable mentions for me. Andrew Wiggins, he did not crack my list. I've never been a big fan of Andrew Wiggins, and I'm waiting to see him really flip that switch and kind of attack. And Otto Porter, big-time fan of him in D.C. I was pretty bummed to see him go, but those are my 2 honorable mentions.
I'll kick it off now with my number 10 small forward in the NBA. That is Harrison Barnes of this Sacramento Kings now. He's been with a couple different teams, obviously won a championship with the Warriors, went over to Dallas, got a pretty big deal, and now he's been traded. He's over in Sacramento, where he's kind of going to become the guy now, I'd say. He's never been one of the top small forwards, but I think he does his job the right way. He's averaging 16.9 and 4 right now. So Harrison Barnes, he's not going to be the flashiest player. He's not going to put up the most stats, but he does his job. He's leading a Sacramento's team that's very young, and I like what he's been able to do in his entire career. I think he's had a very nice career. He won a championship, got a huge deal with Dallas, and now he's going to lead a Sacramento team that's on the rise. So I like Harrison Barnes a lot. He does everything the right way, pretty mobile, and can do everything. So Harrison Barnes is my number 10 small forward in the NBA.
Yeah, I like that pick. I like Barnes. He kind of got the worst end of the stick there when Durant was rumored to be interested in Golden State. Obviously, he's going to be the one to go. But he got a big deal in Dallas, and he's really turned into more of a scorer. I never thought of him as a true scorer, but that's what he's turned into. Now he has a great opportunity as a leader. Kings are 3 games outside of the playoffs right now, but they have a chance to get in. So I like that pick. My number 10 guy is also a guy that spent time in D.C., Bojan Bogdanovic. He's now on the Indiana Pacers, but you want to talk about a 3-and-D guy. This guy resembles it perfectly. One of the most underrated shooters in the NBA. I'd say he's top 10 shooter without a doubt. He's averaging 17.5 points per game, which shocks me. I was a big Wizards fan, so when I watched him, he came off the bench. He's kind of our 6th man. I never thought he'd turn into a 17, 18 points per game kind of guy.
Cool.
But he has. And this Indiana team, when Oladipo went down, everyone, including me, wrote them off. But they're continuing to fight. They're still hanging on to that 3 seed, and it's because of him. He is their leader in terms of scoring, and he's a very underrated defender. I got Bojan Bogdanovic at number 10.
That's a really good pick. He's a great shooter, like he said, and he's been able to keep that Indiana team at the top of the Eastern Conference without Victor Oladipo and him going down. So great pick there. Number 9 for me is a guy you left off your list. That is Andrew Wiggins. I'm not huge on him like I was coming out of high school. I know he was one of the best Canadian players to come out. Very excited to see him play in college. He had a nice career at Kansas, only 1 year. Played with Joel Embiid for a little bit. And then got drafted number 1 to Cleveland. But never played, only in the summer league for Cleveland. As he was traded to the Timberwolves for Kevin Love and that big deal. But he's never really been able to take off and become the dominant small forward I thought he could be. But he's still a nice player. He's averaging 17 points and 4 rebounds. So he does his job. He's very athletic, but he's still very young, and he hasn't really matured into the player I thought he could be. And that whole Timberwolves team kind of is the same way. Karl-Anthony Towns, I think, is right up there with him. But Andrew Wiggins, I still think he's going to be a very good NBA player. He could be a perennial all-star one day if he really changes his mindset and takes over, becomes that guy that the Timberwolves need him to do. I think Andrew Wiggins still has a very good ceiling, but for me right now, he does crack the top 10, but he's at number 9.
Yeah, I thought you nailed that take. When you talk about mindset, this is a guy, for me, when I look at this guy, just like his teammate Karl-Anthony Towns, there's no reason this guy shouldn't be dominating. 6'8", 6'9",
yep.
Can shoot it, very athletic. He reminds me of a bigger Kobe Bryant, the way he's built and his athleticism, but he just doesn't seem to want it, and he kind of shies away in big-time moments. So he's not cracking on by the top 10 on my list, but he's still young. He still has time. I'd like to see him flip the switch.
Yep.
My number 9 guy might be my favorite player in the NBA right now. That is simply Joe Ingles. Love Joe Ingles, Australian-born, played all over Europe. He's traveled everywhere. Finally got his chance with Utah. He played at the Clippers for a little bit. They cut him. Gets a great chance in Utah, and man, has he made the most of it. We've watched this guy last year.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about Paul George later on in this segment, but you talk about a guy that, he took it to Paul George last year in the playoffs. He doesn't shy away from any moment. We saw him 2 years ago. He guarded Chris Paul that entire series against the Clippers. Last year, guarded Paul George, so very underrated defensively, and he's very smart. I watched a lot of Utah. I love this Utah team, so I watched a lot of their games, and the way he handles pick and rolls, he's very, very smart, and he's turned into a great shooter. Joe Ingles, number 9 for me.
That's a fantastic pick. I love watching him play. One of my favorite players to watch. Obviously, we've watched him in Utah the past couple of postseasons, like he said. So, great pick there. Not in my list, but very close. He's a great role player, and he's a big part of that Utah team. Number 8 for me is the youngest player on this team, or maybe one of the youngest. He is the youngest. That's Jason Tatum of the Boston Celtics. Really took over last year in the playoffs, like we kind of said last segment, but really hasn't been the same guy this year. I do think he will become one of the top small forwards in the league one day, but he's still trying to figure himself out, really take over this team. He will be the number 1 player on the Celtics team once Kyrie leaves and some other things happen. But Jason Tatum, he's a great player. He can do everything, very athletic, very smart, great shooter and scorer. So I really love Jason Tatum. Right now, he's at number 8.
Yeah, I got Tatum at 8 too. And before I get to that, I saw a comment pop up there about how the Lakers won't make the playoffs. So, like seeing that, keep that up because I agree with you 100%. But going back to number 8, Jason Tatum for me as well. Definitely the youngest player on this list. The guy that for me will be in the top 5 on this list. Maybe by next year or a year or two. But this guy, I think Kyrie, like we said, kind of made him take a step back. Because last year, he was kind of the guy. When you watch him in the playoffs, he was kind of their go-to guy, him and Terry Rozier.
He didn't know it yet.
And he didn't even really know it, and maybe that's not even a good thing. I don't know if I want to throw my star into a spotlight like that. And so maybe Kyrie coming back was a good thing, but I think in a couple years, it's got to be his team, without a doubt. Jason Tatum could do everything. He can shoot, he can dribble, very lanky. He is the perfect build of a modern-day small forward. He's number 8 for me.
Number 7 for me is All-Star Chris Middleton of the Milwaukee Bucks. He's averaging 17, 6, and 4 right now, having a great year. He's one of the more underrated players, I think, in the NBA.
Yeah.
He does everything the right way, very athletic, very good defensively, and he can shoot the ball. He plays great with Giannis on that team, and there's a reason they had the number 1 record in the NBA. So Chris Middleton, number 7 on my list, one of the more underrated players in the league. He's going to get the job done every single night. He brings it, and he's a fantastic player that a lot of people need to watch.
Love that take. I'm going to stay right there, too. Chris Middleton's number 7 for me. You want to talk about a guy that's going to give you everything every night. This is a guy. I've watched a couple of Bucks games as of late, so I want to see what this team's all about. I kind of struggled lately, but they lost to Utah the other night. They beat that close game with LA, but down the stretch of games, you would think it'd be Giannis every time, but Middleton takes a lot of big-time shots, and he hits a lot of big-time shots. This guy could play. I talked about how Bojan Bogdanovic is a 3-and-D guy. This guy's a much better version of a 3-and-D because of how athletic he is, too. But he brings a lot to it, but he's also a free agent this year. Mm-hmm. I think it'd be crazy if he leaves Milwaukee. It seems to be a perfect fit for him. But Chris Middleton's number 7 for me as well.
Great take there. You're listening to Blue Collar Sports. This is our top 10 current NBA small forwards. Now we get to the top 6 small forwards, and I think this is where we hit the next tier.
Yeah.
This is the top guys of the small forwards in the league. This is why this is the deepest position in the NBA. So now we're going to get to it. I know both of our top 6 is going to be a completely different order, so I'm ready to get to it. Number 6 for me is Jimmy Butler of the Philadelphia 76ers now. He one of the best defensive players, I think, especially on this list. He's going to bring it every single night. Great scorer. He never really was. He started slow, but found his groove. He's doing great stuff right now. I know I want to see him become a bigger proponent of Philadelphia's offense, but defensively he's going to bring it. And if Philadelphia is going to make it anywhere close to a finals appearance, Jimmy Butler needs to be the guy and take over games.
That is for sure. I'm going to say right there, number 6. You talk about this as the next tier. The difference between 6 7, big-time differences where guys really separate themselves. And Jimmy Butler is a great example of that. This guy came into the league, drafted later, and I believe he was still round 1, but he was drafted late in round 1, or maybe even early second round, out of Marquette. But he came in here with really no, people didn't see him as an offensive scorer. He has completely flipped that switch, averaging 19 points a game this year. I don't like his role in Philadelphia right now. I think he needs to be the vocal point of that team. They kind of run it around Simmons and Embiid. I think it needs to be Butler. I like him the most out of those guys as of right now. I think in the future, obviously, it's different. But Jimmy Butler, a guy can do everything. He can score. His jump shot's gotten a lot better. And, of course, his tenacious defense is what makes up who he is. That story of him beating the Timberwolves starters in practice this year was an awesome story. This guy, his mindset is just going to go out there and he's just going to get it done. He's going to grind it out. Jimmy Butler's number 6 for me.
Number 5 for me is Paul George at the Oklahoma City Thunder. One of the better Pacer players of all time. Now he's in OKC. He finally got that record deal he wanted, and he's playing like it, and he's playing like he deserves it all. He's playing fantastic with Russell Westbrook. Russell knows he's not the number 1 guy. It needs to be Paul George, and that's why Paul George is having an MVP-like season. He's up there in the MVP list, top 3 for me. But Paul George, we all knew he's a great player, but this year he's really taken a step above. He's a great scorer. He's really been shown me he could close games, and he could do everything. He's great defensively, great rebounder. He could score any way possible. So Paul George is number 5 for me.
Before I get into my top 5, I want to remind you guys that this is based off right now. This is Blue Collar. You're listening to Blue Collar Sports. This is our take for top 10 small forwards right now in the NBA right now. My number 5 guy is LeBron James from Los Angeles League. I know you're going to hate that take more than anything, but I'm looking at my list right now. Out of all 10 of these guys, 9 of them are in the playoffs right now. There's one guy that is not, and that is LeBron James. And out of all these guys, outside of all the guys in the top in my top 5 are the guys, the option on their team, except for maybe you can make an argument for the number 1 guy. I'll have more on that in a bit. But LeBron James, like I said, any other year this guy's number 1. Last year, without doubt, he's the number 1 small forward. In any year since probably up
he's
until
been out half the
third
year.
or fourth year in the NBA. He's been the number 1 small forward. I think the reign is being handed down. I don't see LeBron James as the top player in the NBA. And I know you're saying, well, number 5 for his position. But yes, but that's because a lot of the top 10 players in the NBA are small forwards. So he's going to be... I have him as my top 5 small forward. He's in my top 10 for current players still.
He has to be number 1.
But he's definitely not in my top 5 for current players. And he just cracks my top 5 for top small forwards because they're not in the playoffs right now. His defense has gotten significantly worse. In the last couple of years, I've been saying it for the last 3 or 4 years. People are starting to realize it now because they're struggling. But he doesn't try that hard on defense. That's what separates a lot of guys on these lists. Is I look at my top 4, and these guys are all elite defenders. I don't see LeBron as an elite defender anymore. He was, but I don't see him anymore. He's getting older. He's still a top 5 player. The numbers are still there, but it's been a rough year for him. He finds himself number 5 on my list.
Yeah, it hasn't been his best year, absolutely, but he's still near the top for me. I'll have more on him in a little bit. Number 4 for me is Giannis Antetokounmpo of the Milwaukee Bucks. Maybe it's a little low for you, but for me, he's at number 4. Probably the most athletic player, possibly in the whole NBA. There's no player like him who could just, at half court, take 3 steps and dunk the ball. But Giannis, he's a great player. He's won it at the top or near the top for MVP this season, leading this Bucks team with the best record in the NBA. He's really shown how he could become a better scorer. He's doing that now. Still needs to find that jump shot, but he can rebound. He can pass the ball, plays defense. Giannis is a great player, very lengthy. I like his upside. He's number 4 for me.
Interesting. I thought he'd be a little bit higher. My number 4 guy is Paul George. You just talked about him in number 5. Paul George, for me, has really turned his career around this season. He's really built his legacy based on this season. And I did not see that coming. I was pretty surprised when he, first of all, he stayed in Oklahoma City last year. But now
Could be doing this in LA.
Him and Westbrook just gel. They have a relationship. You can tell they get along off the court, but on the court, I think Westbrook has finally started to realize that this guy's just as good as me, if not probably better. But Paul George, he's inside the MVP conversation. You could look at his offensive numbers, of course. He's number one out of all these small forwards in scoring this year at 28 points per game. But his defense, he leads the league in steals. It's pretty remarkable. Of course, James Harden's going berserk in scoring averaging 36 points per game. But if it weren't for him, Paul George would have the opportunity this year to lead the league in scoring and in steals, which is pretty remarkable when you look at a two-way player. And Paul George, I loved him in Indiana. Then I kind of thought the superstar mindset hit him.
Yeah.
I think it's what John Wall is kind of going through right now, where they see themselves as better than the team. They're above the team. Cough, cough, LeBron James.
He is.
But Paul George this year, I think, has flipped that switch. He's gone back to his old self where he's going to grind it out defensively, and his offense has been taken to another level. Paul George is number 4 for me.
Number 3 for me is Toronto Raptor Kawhi Leonard. He could do it all. I think one of the top defensive players in the entire league. He's the claw. He could do it all. He was a guy in San Antonio. Really, it was surprising that whole situation when he wanted to leave. Now he's in Toronto, where I do think it actually fits his style. He's not the biggest talker. He wants to stay out of the spotlight. That's kind of Toronto. It's not even in the U.S. So he's a Toronto Raptor. Not a lot of people are paying close attention to him, but he's still doing his thing. He still is a very dominant player. He's never been really the offensive guy, but what we saw in the finals and ever since then, he's really taken over. So I really like Kawhi Leonard a lot. He knows how to win. He's going to take this team very far. And if they're going to win and get to the finals, it's going to be because Kawhi Leonard takes over and because one of the best players in the league.
Kawhi Leonard is my number 3 as well, and I think he is a top 5 player in the NBA. But he's still kind of on that minutes restriction, games restriction. He still misses a lot of games. I want to see him get back to full strength Kawhi. But man, you'll get this year. He has a great opportunity. He's averaging 27 points per game right now, and of course his defense has never left him. Toronto's, I said they're probably my favorite to make the NBA Finals right now. Very interesting to see. We know they choke come playoff time, but this is a different Toronto team.
Yeah.
Kawhi Leonard's a different player. Love DeMar DeRozan, but Kawhi Leonard's on a different level, and he's my top 3 small forward and one of the best in the NBA.
Number 2 for me is Kevin Durant. He's got to be up there. He's the second best player in the league, so he's got to be number 2 of the small forwards. He could do it all. Really, there's nothing to talk about. He's one of the best scorers in the league. He could rebound. He's really upped his defense. I think he's been able to improve that once he's been over in Golden State. But he's probably the best scorer outside of Steph Curry, I'd say, in the NBA, and James Harden. He could shoot the ball. He could do it all. Kevin Durant's number 2.
I'm going to have more on Kevin in a second. Now, my number 2 guy is Giannis Antetokounmpo, a guy who very well could take over the NBA. He's still under 25 years old. It's incredible. And this guy is... I watched him play. I watched the whole Bucks-Jazz game the other night, and the Jazz actually won that game. But watching Giannis, they put Rudy Gobert on him. Rudy Gobert is a Defensive Player of the Year. He's a candidate every single year. They put Rudy on him, and he was bulldozing through 7'2" Rudy Gobert, and he hit 3 threes in that game. His shot looks a little bit better, because I think in today's NBA he's going to have to develop that. But Giannis Antetokounmpo, you want to talk about a guy we have never seen before. This guy is incredible. You can't compare him to anybody. He's his own unique version, and he is really dominating. Giannis Antetokounmpo could be the best player in the NBA in the next couple of years. Right now, he's my number 2 small forward.
And the number 1 small forward in the NBA is a guy you had way too low. That is still the chosen one, LeBron James. I know he's been out half the year, but I'm not looking at the team. I'm not looking at if they're in the playoffs or not. I'm looking at the player themselves. Who can do it all? That is LeBron James still. He can score, he can pass, he can rebound, he can play defense. I know his defense, it's been shaky sometimes. It hasn't been what it used to be. We don't see the chase down blocks anymore. But that is what we know LeBron James for. So it's still defense. And he can score the ball any way possible now that he's kind of starting to find his jump shot. He can knock down threes every once in a while. He can still get to the rim. He can still dunk. LeBron James is still the number 1 small forward, even though he's been out half the year. When he's playing this Lakers team, I saw the stats today, they're plus 6-7 when he's on the court, and they need him to play, honestly, every minute if they're going to look to win any games. But LeBron James still is the best player in the NBA.
Yeah, I got him down at 5. My number 1 guy is Kevin Durant. And we were talking about this morning, but Kevin Durant, when I watch this guy play, I think he's top 3 for me, maybe number 1, the greatest scorer, pure scorer I've ever seen. The guy's 7 feet tall. He can shoot threes like it's nothing. He can get to the rim. And you talk about his defense, he has really upped his defense, which is I think the one thing that when he came to the league, people were worried about because of how skinny he was. Will he be able to keep up defensively? He made the most of it. He's an elite defender right now, and he's the greatest scorer in the game. You could look at James Harden. He's averaging 36 points per game. But Kevin Durant's in a whole different role with the Golden State Warriors than James Harden is with the Houston Rockets. And that's, I think, a huge thing you could look at in terms of success for Kevin Durant. He bought into that system. He could have gone to Golden State and really destroyed what was going on there by demanding the ball. He's fine with letting other guys take shots. I know late in games he likes to have the ball, which I like that. His mind says he wants the ball, he wants to go win it. But he's giving up shots, and he's a very efficient player. Kevin Durant is my number 1 small forward and might be my number 1 player in the game today.
Might be. I don't know about that. But JP Sorensen, great comment. NBA backboard for NBA Defensive Player of the Year. That's a pretty good comment there. I know that was not a good look for LeBron James. I don't know for you if that was the tipping point of their season, but that was very unfortunate. It's probably going to win Shaq in the full for the season.
Yeah, and I think my favorite. There's been a lot of videos surfacing about these Lakers games, and I think my favorite might have been last night. Kyle Kuzma pushing LeBron James to go defend Gallinari's 3-pointer, and I loved it because Kyle Kuzma's not known for his defense. That guy's not a defender, and when you're perhaps the greatest player in the game,
he is.
And you're having a guy like Kuzma tell you to go play defense. That's the tipping point of the season for the Los Angeles Lakers. That you could point to that right there and say that is why they're not going to the playoffs.
Well, a lot of things to really laugh about, but we'll see once it happens if they make it or not. But that is our top 10 current NBA small forwards. Let's recap the list. Number 10 for me, Harrison Barnes. 9, Andrew Wiggins. Number 8, Jason Tatum. 7, Chris Middleton. 6, Jimmy Butler. 5, Paul George. 4, Giannis Antetokounmpo. 3, Kawhi Leonard. Number 2, Kevin Durant. And number 1 still is LeBron James.
Yeah, definitely some differences here. Number 10 for me is Bojan Bogdanovic. Number 9, Joe Ingles, my guy. Number 8, Jason Tatum. 7, Chris Middleton. 6, Jimmy Butler. 5, LeBron James. 4, Paul George. 3, Kawhi Leonard. 2, Giannis Antetokounmpo. And number 1, Kevin Durant.
Y'all, like we said, a lot of differences. I knew that coming in. Don't like your list too much, but we know the real list is right here.
Well, that wraps up that segment. You're listening to Blue Collar Sports. Stay tuned. We got MLB, college basketball, lots going on in the sports world that we're going to touch on before we wrap up hour number 1. You just heard our top 10 small forwards. Stay tuned. It's going to be a great rest of the show.